Starting off at number 10 now, we have the corpse train. Now, according to London folklore, in the early 1900s there was a train that ran underneath the city and it was only for dead people. Back then, London's hospitals and morgues were struggling to deal with the vast amount of people that were dying from poverty and disease. They decided to transport the bodies out of the city, but knew that they couldn't do it overground without disturbing a lot of people. So they used an existing train line to load the bodies onto. The train ran just the other side of a wall from the normal daily service, where unsuspecting Londoners were getting on and off their trains unaware of the nearby bodies. Next up at number 9 now, we have the suicide pool. This one comes from Epping Forest near Essex. The story goes that years ago, a young couple in love were followed to a pond in the forest by the girl's father. When the couple finally embraced, the father leapt from the trees to confront the boy. The fight got out of hand and the father ended up killing the boy in a rage at the edge of the pool. The waters then turned black. Wildlife that was touching the water died instantly. In the years that followed, bodies started to appear in the water. First it was an old woman, then a young one with her young child beside her. They say the pool drew them into their death and that the pool is still out there in the forest somewhere waiting for its next victim. Next up at number 8 now, we have Annie. This one comes from Edinburgh, Scotland. In the old town there lies a street known as Mary King's Close. It's steeped in myths and legends of hauntings and murders. In 1990, a psychic called Aiko Gibo visited and felt a small hand touch hers. She said that she then made contact with the spirit of a dead child called Annie who had died in a plague hundreds of years ago and had lost her doll. The psychic then went to a nearby shop and brought back a Barbie doll for her. Now since then, visitors leave dolls for Annie and a mountain of them has built up in the dark. Moving on to number 7 now, we have the Faceless Woman. This one comes from the borough of Barking in London. There you can find Beacon Tree Station, home to the Faceless Woman. The most famous sighting of her happened in 1992. A station supervisor reported that on one night he heard the handle of his office door rattle. Outside on the platform stood a woman. She had blonde hair, she wore a very pale dress and just stared into the distance. The supervisor approached her, but as he reached out, she turned to him only to reveal she had no face, just darkness where there should be one. Local ghost hunters claim that she is the victim of a train crash that happened there in 1958 which killed 10 people. At number 6 now, we have the Beast. England's Hackney Marshes is known for its sprawling woodland and boggy reed marshes often covered in swirling fog, the perfect setting for this urban legend. The story goes that in 1980, 2 bear carcasses were found in the river. They had been decapitated. People started speculating about who or what could cut a bear's head clean off its shoulders. Then a year later, 4 boys were taking a walk along the marsh one winter morning when they saw it through the trees. They described it as a giant, great, growling, hairy thing. As soon as it saw them, it reared up on its back legs and let out a deafening roar. The boys ran, but the story remains always in the back of people's minds as they trudged through the marsh. We're returning now to the London Underground for our number 5 with The Crying Girl. On November 18th, 1987, a match was dropped on an escalator at London's King Cross station. A fire quickly spread into the nearby ticket office, which resulted in the death of 31 people. In the years since then, passengers have reported seeing a girl who died around the station. She has long brown hair, wears jeans and a t-shirt, and is always crying. Some people have even reported hearing her sobs while smelling smoke coming out from the escalators. Back to Scotland now for our number 4 with Sawney Bean. This is the gruesome tale of Alexander Sawney Bean, a man who was said to be the head of a Scottish clan of cannibals in medieval times. According to legend, the group was made up of his wife, their 14 children and 32 grandchildren, some of whom were born through incest. They lived in a cave by the water and would ambush people on the road at night. They would bring their bodies back to the cave to then dismember and eat them. Any leftovers were pickled in a jar for later. When King James VI of Scotland eventually heard of these murders, he led a manhunt to capture them. The clan was caught and then executed. Some people say you can still find the cave along the Benane Head area of Scotland. Moving on to number 3 now, we have Cane Hill. Some say this is one of the most haunted places in England. It was a mental asylum for over 100 years from 1882 to 1991. It built up a reputation for abandoning some of its patients, hiding them away from the public eye and never truly helping keeping them. Some people say the patients who died left their energy behind there because of their tortured lives. The building was gutted by a mysterious fire in 2010. Perhaps the scariest stories of all are of the faces appearing by the burnt out windows. Next up at number 2 now, we have the House of the Screaming Skull. This one comes from Bettiscombe Manor in Dorset, England. The legend goes that in 1830 a man lived there called John Frederick Pinney. He had a slave that he had brought back from the Caribbean island of Nevis. The man became ill, and on his deathbed he swore he would never rest unless his body was returned home to Nevis. Pinney refused to pay for that expense, and when he died he had the man buried in the local graveyard. After that, ill fortune began to plague the village for months. Screams and cries were heard from the cemetery. At the manor house, windows rattled and doors kept slamming. The body was dug up and brought to the manor house, where today only the skull remains, where it's said to haunt the manor, but the village remains safe. And finally at number 1 now, we have the Hellhounds. Dartmoor is a vast, rocky, windy and mysterious part of England. It's popular among tourists, but everyone who goes there is aware of the legend of the Hellhounds. It's said that a pack of these ghost dogs wanders the moors at night, preying on sheep, and they're not afraid of humans. They've often been described as cat-like, but with the frame of a bear, and very fast. There have been pictures and film taken of them over the years that claim to show glimpses of these hellhounds in action. Many of the locals don't even need that though. They've heard the stories handed down from generation to generation. Some of them even say they've seen the hounds with their own 2 eyes.
Coming in at number 10 of our Disney urban legends, Walt Disney haunts Disneyland, California. Walt Disney opened the original Disneyland in 1955 and he loved the place. In fact, saying he loved the place is a huge understatement. He doted on the place. He spent the majority of his time there until his death in 1966. Walt had an apartment above the fire station on Main Street. When he was in residence, it was said he always kept a lamp burning in the window so everyone knew he was there. When he died, the lamp was switched off. Eerily though, it seemed that the lamp would have a way of turning itself back on. One day, a staff member was cleaning the apartment when she heard a voice that said, "I'm still here." From that day on, Disney's lamp has kept on burning in the window as a mark of respect and acknowledgement for his ghost. Coming in at number 9, there are real skeletons on Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean ride. So according to legend, real human skeletons are used throughout the Pirates of the Caribbean rides, and this is exactly what Walt Disney ordered. I guess this kind of makes riding on the scary themed log ride even spookier, knowing that you're surrounded by actual skeletons. Some people even say that Walt Disney's own skeleton is hidden amongst the bodies on the ride. Now I actually do know the truth behind this creepy urban legend. Like most stories that have been passed down over the years, there is some truth to it. When the ride first opened in 1967, 1 year after Disney's death, fake skeletons looked pretty rubbish, well, like pretty fake. So in the planning and building stage, Walt Disney wanted real skeletons to be used. He never got to see the finished product, but true to his wishes, real skeletons were indeed used. Eventually though, they were replaced. Not only was it kind of morbid to have a bunch of dead people on a Disney ride, fake skeletons started looking a lot better. Now the only real human skull that exists is on the headboard of a bed at Disney World in Florida. This is really weird because on this ride they never had fully human skeletons anyway, like in California, so. Also Disney are telling us that they're now fake skeletons, but who knows? Coming into number 8, there is a ghost hitchhiker on Space Mountain. Legend has it that a red-haired man who died on the ride still enjoys a spin today. The man, often dubbed Mr. One Way, is said to have died in the 1970s whilst on the attraction. It is said that he sits next to single riders, but by the time the ride ends, there is absolutely no sign of him. For those that don't see him, they say they can feel him behind them if there is an empty seat at the back. There have been a number of reports of the hitcher, and he may or may not have been caught on camera a couple of times. Check this out. Coming into number 7, we have the mysterious urban legend of Mowgli's Palace. So this is kind of an urban legend creepypasta surrounding an abandoned Disney attraction. Redditor Slimebeast, aka Christopher Howard Wolf, wrote a post about an illicit visit to the grounds of a defunct Disney theme park in Northern Carolina. So allegedly, Disney wanted to open a Jungle Book resort in Emerald Isle, North Carolina. From the very beginning, it seemed to be fraught with issue. The locals did not want Disney to buy the land. Nonetheless, it was bought, and primed for opening, when all of a sudden, the project just stopped. The park was closed, employees were dismissed, the whole place was shut up and hushed up. According to the urban legend, a dude goes to explore, camera in hand. He finds the place in a state of expected disarray. He finds the words "abandoned by Disney" graffitied in a number of areas. Eventually, the intrepid explorer finds staff areas and deduces that the place was not just simply abandoned, it was evacuated. It is then the explorer finds mascot costumes. The only thing is, they're actually alive. Or, it seems that they were. The costumes have skeletons inside of them. As the explorer tries to escape, he said a Mickey Mouse chased him. While there have been some alleged aerial images posted of the secret park, it turns out that it's just a really scary creepypasta. There is actually an abandoned Disney water park that you can still visit if you're an urban explorer these days, but I'm presuming that none of the mascots are alive and running amok there. Coming into number 6, we have the legend of the sacrificed Snow White. A story submitted on Reddit 4 years ago really gives me the chills. Posted in the No Sleep subreddit, Redditor Bletch1994 shared his experience of working for the Magic Kingdom. Upvoted over 2,000 times, the poster kept his real name anonymous. He said that 99% of all the work at Walt Disney World goes on after the show is over. He was working construction on the park for a while, mainly working on the Seven Dwarfs Mine train ride, which was set to open up. Long Reddit story short, the guy said that a lot of the crew were very sketchy about being alone in various places. They had to take their lunch breaks at 3 AM, and one day the guy forgot his lunch bag and headed back to get it. But he stumbled across what can only be described as a sacrificial cult scene. Robed figures were crowded around a Snow White character who was bound, gagged, and crying. The guy said a half moon was carved into her forehead and she was cut by the figures. The guy basically said he was so freaked out that he turned and ran. Now the next day he told his older foreman what he had seen. This man had worked at the park for nearly 4 decades. The foreman told him that he had seen a lot of this kind of thing in his time at Disney, and that the land was brought from a lot of groups who required special payment in the form of blood sacrifices. He urged that a construction worker to never discuss what he'd seen, mentioning that the executives at Club 33 were more powerful than he could ever imagine. Now he finishes the Reddit post by saying that he quit right there on the spot. Good. Coming into number 5, we have the legend of the Platform D bellhop on the Tower of Terror. In 2007, Walt Disney's Hollywood Studios Tower of Terror took its final plunge, but what will happen to the ghost of the bellhop said to haunt the Twilight Zone? Legend has it that one of Disney's cast members who operated the ride as a bellhop dropped dead one day on their shift. The Tower of Terror has 4 elevators: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. The bellhop died on Platform Delta as he loaded guests onto the attraction. Now it seems that the man may never have actually clocked out for his shift. Disney cast members test the rides before they open to the public, and some have reported someone else sitting with them on the elevator when testing from Delta. There have been pictures of a ghost-like figure sitting in the back of the ride. Now again, a photo was taken after hours on the tower, and some people have spotted a truly ghostly figure. The ride is currently being torn down to make way for a Marvel attraction, so who knows what will happen to the ghost. Perhaps it will make him angry. This is a very popular one at number 4. Disney is cryogenically frozen. So I don't really know where this one comes from, but a lot of people seem to believe it. When the topic of freezing comes up, a lot of people cite Walt Disney as a main contender. Disney died of lung cancer in December of 1966, aged just 65. The urban legend seems to come from a comment made by the president of the California Cryogenic Society in the 1970s. Bob Nelson told the LA Times that Walt Disney wanted to be frozen. This led to Disney's daughter Diana making a public statement to target the claims. She said, "There is absolutely no truth to the rumor that my father, Walt Disney, wished to be frozen. So if he had been frozen and we eventually found a cure for lung cancer, a whole new generation could enjoy Disney movies." I wonder how it would feel to be woken up after 50 years of being frozen. I guess ask Austin Powers. Again, we have a very popular urban legend at number 3. Disney used mind control on kids watching his movies because the Illuminati told him to do so. There have been so many Disney conspiracy theories out there that Walt Disney wanted to turn kids into sex-crazed teenagers. Movies including Aladdin, The Lion King, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Ariel the Little Mermaid, and The Rescuers have all been accused of trying to brainwash kids with non-PG content. So-called truth seekers have tried to expose Disney for its sexual content, saying there is sex written in the sky in The Lion King, that the genie in Aladdin tells teenagers to take off their clothes, and of course there's some classic Jessica Rabbit vajay. Some say that Disney wanted to sexualize children from a young age as the Illuminati wanted them to be targets of abuse. Disney's Club 33 has also been amid paedophile ring claims, but we'll get to that later. I personally don't know about this one, but I don't know, maybe the urban legend is true and we're all sex crazed because we watched Pocahontas once. Coming in at number 2, urban legend has it that the It's a Small World dolls move and switch places. I think we can all agree that the It's a Small World ride is pretty creepy. It just is. Tiny dolls scare me at the best of times, but singing tiny dolls? La! It's also one of the oldest Disney attractions, which somehow to me makes the whole thing creepier. Anyway, legend has it that the dolls come alive when no one is looking. How do we know? Well, it seems they have often been found in switch positions. Employees at Disney have mentioned it on several occasions, with many way too freaked out to go near the ride. Some even go as far as to say the dolls keep singing after hours. Author Ridley Pearson is one of the more high-profile people who swears he saw the doll move. He was on a VIP after hours tour and is convinced that they have a life of their own. How can they keep singing when the electricity's been shut off? I don't know. Clearly they're evil. I think I can tell that by looking at their creepy little doll faces though. Ah! I wonder what happens if you play It's a Small World backwards. I bet it's like, take off your clothes, teenagers once again. The genie's anything to go by. Finally, coming into number 1 of our top 10 creepy Disney urban legends, we have Club 33 is the Illuminati headquarters. There have been a lot of links between Walt Disney and the Illuminati. Loads. When Walt Disney was alive, many people accused him of being part of the Freemasons, a group that is constantly linked to the Illuminati. There definitely seems to be something shifty going on at Club 33, the exclusive clubhouse in Disneyland, California. It is the only place in Disneyland that serves alcohol. It actually seems that these days, clubhouses exist across all of the parks. Officially, the original club was intended for use by Disneyland's corporate sponsors and industry VIPs. Now, the original location is somewhat hidden in New Orleans Square, and you can only gain membership by invite. Paul McCartney and Elton John are said to be members, although a lot of people are totally convinced that something very suspicious and culty is going on behind those doors. Remember the Snow White point from earlier on in the video? Like, maybe these are the people slashing up Disney characters for some kind of blood sacrifice. I don't know, for me, this is definitely just an urban legend. Coming in at number 10, we have the Wendigo. The Wendigo is something that we like to talk about a lot on Life's Biggest Questions. The Wendigo is a lesson that cannibalism is never gonna end well. The legend of the Wendigo comes from the Algonquin people, which is actually relatively near to where I am here in Toronto. I've actually been to Algonquin National Park and I was scared of bears the first time I went, but the next time I will be aware of the Wendigo. The story of the Wendigo goes that once he was a lost hunter that during a particular harsh winter, and trust me they do get very cold here in Canada, got really hungry. He couldn't find anything to hunt, he couldn't find anything to eat. This continued for days, for months. His hunger became so intense that he turned to cannibalism. After eating human flesh, he became a crazed monster and continued to roam in search of his next fleshy meal. Now the Wendigo, who is 15 feet tall, looks a little like this. Ooh. The Wendigo is said to roam free in the icy plains of Canada and the northern states of the USA, like Minnesota, Illinois, and upstate New York. The legend has legs too, literally. There have been several spates of Wendigo sightings over the past 150 or so years, most notably when a number of people from the Algonquin went missing in the 20th century. The Wendigo was to blame. The Wendigo is said to lure you away from civilization to icier plains and will then eat you alive. Hard no from me to Mr. Wendigo. Stay away. Do you want to meet the Native American Voldemort? Coming in at number 9, we have the legend of Two-Face. This is a morality lesson and a scary urban legend at the very same time. The legend of Two-Face, often called Sharp Elbows or Hester Voto Keo, is about not giving attention to bad things. The story is most popular among the Sioux people, and incantations can be found across a lot of First Nations groups. The story goes that the Two-Face creature is a bit of an attention hog, to put it it lightly. They are a nasty presence that wants you to look at them. They will do anything to get your attention, but be warned, if you give in, if you look at it, if you give it the attention it craves, it will cut you. Actually, though, it will cut you. One legend is often told about a heavily pregnant Sioux woman. She heard a voice behind her and intuition told her that she shouldn't look around. She was right. The strange voice tried even harder to get her to look, but still she did not. Later, she told her husband, and he was glad. He said that the voice had come from a malevolent creature that would appear to her 4 times. She must ignore it each and every time. If she successfully ignored it 4 times, it would leave her alone forever. Now, it did appear twice more, and twice she successfully ignored it, but on the 4th time, things didn't go well. The 4th time came and she decided to have a peek at the creature. Curiosity got the better of her and she peered through a crack when she thought it was turned away. But what did she see? A ghoulish being with 2 faces and razor-sharp elbows. Its other face turned to look at her directly. It lurched out and cut her to shreds. Lesson being, never give in to negative voices no matter how hard they shout. They will destroy you. Coming in at number 8, we have skinwalkers. In Navajo culture, the legend of skinwalkers is enduring. In fact, the legend is so widely perpetuated that a lot of people outside of the Native American cultures are very scared of them too. Skinwalkers are said to be witches who ascend to their superhuman powers by sacrificing/murdering a close family member. Honestly, how awful. These skinwalkers can then take the form of an animal of their choosing, but they most commonly appear as wolves, owls, coyotes, foxes, and even crows. These witches are said to be extremely dangerous, and you do not want to encounter one for fear of invoking their wrath. What will their wrath do? Straight up murder, once again. These skinwalkers are said to be most commonly found stalking deserts in California like Death Valley, the Mojave National Reserve, and Joshua Tree, so watch out. From skinwalkers to Skinwalker Ranch up next at number 7. Some weird things have been happening at the so-called Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. Native Americans in the area truly believe that the area is plagued and cursed by evil spirits, and well, they might actually be right. The ranch became notorious in the media when the Sherman family spoke out about their experience living there in the 1990s. Their stories involved strange lights, ghostly apparitions, and the tale of an invincible wolf that I found particularly interesting. It seems that the Sherman family came across what seemed like a friendly wolf. So friendly, it approached them from time to time. Sadly though, the wolf could not be trusted. It killed a number of their cattle, which are expensive to come by. Now this prompted the head of the Sherman family to shoot it with a .375 Magnum. Nothing. It was struck again. Nothing. The wolf was shot several times more, but it simply walked away. Was this an encounter with a real-life skinwalker? Maybe. Coming in at number 6, we have stick people. Beware the stick people. While they may seem like cheeky pests, they're actually pretty malicious when threatened. The stick people are a legend from the Salish who live in British Columbia. They believe that in the woods there are a tribe of mystical people, stick people. They're a lot like other native tribes, but they're very elusive and they have mystical powers. They communicate by using bird and animal sounds. In the woods, it is said that they will disorientate wanderers with mind control powers. Tricksters, sure. The stick people are said to enter villages at night and mess with tribes, stealing their nets, eating their food, or simply just pulling down men's clothing. Classic. However, you never want to encounter a stick person face to face. This is why young First Nations children are warned never to enter forests alone. If you come across a stick person, they will feel very threatened, and the next time they enter a settlement, they will do more than steal food. They will actually steal children. They'll take the children as punishment and raise them as slaves. Coming into number 5, we have ghost sickness. In Native American culture, it is possible for a person to fall ill with something called ghost sickness. Navajo legend has it that ghost sickness can strike if a deceased person is not buried with the right rituals. If that is the case, the spirit of the deceased can become disruptive and make a living person ill. With ghost sickness, the sufferer will start having terrible dreams about the person who's died. They will become obsessed with their death. They will feel depressed and also physically weak. They may also start to hear voices. According to legend, the only way to recover from ghost sickness is to undergo a ritual performed by a religious leader, and often make adjustments to the burial of the dead to satisfy them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the cause of ghost sickness. Up next at number 4, we have the chindi. So the chindi is said to be bad energy left over from a person who has died. The chindi is produced when a person takes their last breath. Actually, a lot of First Nations people believe that it is much better for people to die out in the open, as it leaves more space for the chindi to disperse. Dying inside a house practically dooms that building to being haunted forever. The Navajo are so wary of invoking chindi that will actually get rid of a deceased person's possessions. Even saying a deceased person's name is a certain way to summon their bad energy. Just don't do it. Coming into number 3, we have the legend of the dust devils. Navajo people are watchful and wary of dust. Why? Well, because they're actually spirits interacting with the land in the form of a little whirlwind. Whether it's benevolent or malevolent depends on the direction the dust or dirt is spinning. In Navajo folklore, if you see dust spinning in a clockwise direction, everything's fine. But if it spins counterclockwise, well, you better have your wits about you, as you are in the presence of an evil entity. Giant disembodied heads, anyone? Sure. Coming in at number 2, we have the legends of the flying head. The flying head legend is most popular in Iroquois and Wyandot culture. Flying heads are thought to be produced from cannibals or from battles wherein people have physically lost their heads. Flying heads are giant, ravenous beings with neck-length hair. Do you want to see a depiction? I'm kind of here for them. I can imagine myself as like a giant ravenous head sometimes. Some descriptions even have them with bat wings, and they're said to have an insatiable hunger, so insatiable that they're often led to eat people. Nonetheless, no man-made weapon can kill them. The only way to be rid of them is to trick them into eating hot coals. Easier said than done, I think. Finally, coming into number 1, we have the owls. I really like this tale of how owls were created, and it's pretty scary and may make you feel not so great about our murderous feathery friends. As told by the Yakama, the story goes that there was once 5 sisters who lived in a cave. These sisters were no normal humans. In fact, they would eat vile things like frogs, lizards, snakes, and mice, things that other First Nations people simply wouldn't eat. Some even said that they would eat tribes people if they took a disliking to them. Were these 5 sisters the native equivalent of witches? Quite possibly. They seem to be in touch with a lot of bad energy and cause a lot of people a lot of problems. Luckily for the other tribes though, one by one the women died. Finally, everybody breathed a sigh of relief as the final sister drowned. You would think that would have been the end of it, but no. From one of her eyes, it is said that all owls were created. Sure, because owls. Now when you see owls, apparently they are a small part of the evil 5th sister, part of her soul that's always watching and waiting. But for what? Owls. Who knew?